Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thanks for stopping by to watch. Well, the little chilly still, but the sun came out today and it's quite nice. The rain that we've been getting lately, look at this is just a little wet weather creek. It only has water in it, when the rainy season, but it's got a good flow to it. And then the big creek down that way, my goodness, it's got some rapids going on in it with all this rain that we've had the last few days. So I guess that's a good thing, kind of washing things out and filling things up. But today I figured it was just time for another one of them talks where I'm just blabbering about whatever's on my mind and not so much about what's in the news and stuff. I think we kind of sometimes get tired of hearing about all that. And there's just been some things on my mind, and a conversation my wife and I had yesterday kind of all fits together. So I thought I'd talk about that. Before I get started though, everybody's still stocking up as much as you can, stack it to the rafters, because, we know it's getting bad and it's going to get worse. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So if you're in the market for long-term freeze-dried emergency food, that stuff that you put in a can or in a bucket and you just kind of forget about it basically until you need it because it's going to last so long. If you go down to in the description, there's a link there to My Patriot Supply. It's a company that I work with, and they offer some of the best price per calorie food out there, I believe. It's good quality stuff, and they're able to keep up on their shipments still, and a lot of companies are really struggling with that. They kind of thought ahead at the beginning of all this crazy health stuff, and they did a lot of building onto their business and adding new factories and stuff. So they're one of the few that's really able to still keep up. So if you're in the market for that kind of stuff, like I said, there's a link down in the description below. It'll take you there if you're interested in buying, and if not, that's fine, because it's not the only kind of things that you should be buying for food. That's kind of really lower down the priority list in my opinion, but it's still good stuff, and that's why I work with them. All right, so my wife and I were talking. I've been thinking about all this stuff that's just going on, and I'm not just talking about the stuff that we talk about a lot on here, financial stuff and health crisis. Can't talk about that no more or I'll get kicked off again. All this stuff in the news, but then there's other stuff. There's just how our society is just changing so rapidly, how the moral degradation, the very fabric of what we've always considered makes us American, or makes us Christian, or, just makes us a good, decent person. It's all into question now, and it's all being changed. And they're trying to force all this stuff in our children, at schools, and the stuff that they're teaching them. These teachers, it's like they're not even teaching anymore. They're trying to be some kind of therapist for the kid and convince them that they're some other gender than what they are, that they should be going by some ridiculous pronouns that no one even knows what it means. This is the kind of stuff. They get these cross-dressing people coming in and doing story time with children. I mean, it's absolute insanity. And if you decide to still watch TV, it's even worse. There's nothing normal on anymore. There's no normal traditional family anymore. Even the churches nowadays, it's so watered down. It's like, what's the point of even going? My grandpa, he was an old-fashioned country preacher, literally. The church he preached in didn't even have running water. I remember as a kid growing up, you had to go outside behind the building to an outside toilet. Didn't flush or nothing. And he always used to say, if you're going to behave like that, and if the church is going to be, a big party place, and, it's this touchy-feely, everybody kumbaya, then what's the point? What are you getting saved from, if you're not going to change your life, if you're not going to clean up, if you're not going to try to be a little bit more righteous than what you were, try to seek that righteousness, then what's the point of it all? And, we've got a lot of feel-good religion going on. Everything. It seems like everything that's going on right now in our whole culture is just, it's completely different. But this has been going on for a while. It's almost like it's kind of come to a head here recently, just in the last few years. But I was talking to my wife. We were talking about this. I said, but if you think about it, And this, to me, when you really start, going down this little rabbit hole of thought, to me, probably one of the best reasons, examples, and signs that we are on the brink of a collapse of our civilization in some form or fashion. Does it mean it's going to be like the Book of Eli, Mad Max collapse, or is it just going to be some, revolution and end up being like 1984 or something like that? Who knows? But I'm more and more convinced than ever that that's what we are experiencing. That's what we're living through. And I believe that's biblical too. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to get at is, for all of you, especially the history kind of buffs, think back over what you've learned about of human history, at least of modern civilization. Approximately 6,000 years. Some people say 10,000 years. Just, somewhere in that, 4 to 10,000 year period going back. Things kind of progressed slowly in civilization. Technology progressed slowly. People didn't really change too much. I mean, look at the entire Roman Empire from the beginning to the end. About 1,000 years or so. And there wasn't really a whole lot of change in just the culture and the people. I mean, a little bit. There was influences from different regions and stuff. But from the beginning of the Roman Empire to the end of the Roman Empire, the average person's life pretty much was unchanged. I mean, there was a little bit of advancement here and there, some new roads and some, waterways and things like that. But the average, homemaker, the average wife, she cooked the same way in her house for the entire 1,000 years. You move up to the Middle Ages, it's kind of the same thing. The entire Middle Ages, a little bit of advancement here and there, but not too much. And, move forward, and you even come into the, the New World, America. From the beginning up until about the late 1800s into even the early 1900s, not really a whole lot had changed. I mean, little bit of change. The invention of the steam engine and the discovery of electricity and how to control it and use it. But, the average home, the average family, the average child was raised pretty much the same way that their grandparents had been, and that their grandparents and their grandparents. Not really a whole lot had changed. And what changes did exist were just kind of incremental changes over a period of decades or even centuries, that it took things to really change a lot. And then you come into the 20th century, and then it just kind of, everything got thrown out the window. And by the 1960s, for really about the first time, the average household by the 50s and the 60s was living the conditions that they were living in was really a lot different than their parents and their grandparents. And by the generation of, mine in the 70s, the kids that were born in the 70s, the time that we grew up, well, it was drastically different. In our generation, we saw basically the home computer came into existence, and cellular technology and things like that. And our children, the millennials, and then the Gen Z generation, the little ones, well, it's totally different. I mean, it's this rapid change. And these are technological changes that I'm referring to, but really there's more than that. I mean, look at how children were raised. Like I said, going back to, say, our grandparents' generation, from them on back, most families all over the world throughout human history, for the most part, I know and I'm generalizing here, but for the most part, most children were pretty much raised the same, always have been. I mean, since pretty much as far back as we can figure in human history, most children pretty much raised the same way. Families kind of existed in the same way. And then all of a sudden, 2-3 decades ago or so, 4 decades maybe, things started to change. All these newfangled ideas about how we should treat a child and how we should raise a child and how we should teach a child all started coming into play. And it was, you can just sit back and watch a timeline of progression to where now we're telling children that, they can choose their own gender, They're making prosthetic, biological gender body parts that you can put on an infant. And because someone may have a little girl and they say that at 6 months old, it's decided to be a boy. So we got to have a little prosthetic body part to put on it. It's ridiculous. The stuff that's going on, it absolutely sounds insane. And I really believe that if someone from 1950 was transported today, they would absolutely think everyone has completely lost their mind and must have escaped from a mental institution. We laugh about it, we roll our eyes, we joke about it, but folks, I think it's really serious. And I think that all this that we're seeing play out in front of us, everything from the political and the economic and the supply chains and the geopolitical stuff that's going on, all the way down to just basically normal society and family values and traditional values and just how a family should exist. I believe it's all a big sign, like slapping us in the face every day, telling us that you're watching this all collapse. And the reason I believe that is because you cannot make so many rapid changes in really such a short amount of time. It's not been tested. No one really knows if this kind of stuff works. I mean, you could say that, well, look at these younger generations that exist now. Maybe the way we've been told that how we should raise them isn't quite right, because they don't seem to be turning out so well. I mean, most of the people in my generation, which is really where that kind of new way of raising a kid kind of started, at least in my experience, you can kind of tell the difference. The people that were probably raised traditional are pretty stable people for the most part. And the ones that, their parents tried all this newfangled way of raising a child probably still have a lot of problems in their lives and they just can't get it together. I know that's really generalizing it, and you're probably going to give me lots of examples of the opposite. But I really believe that that's a fairly decent assessment of what we see right now. No one knows if all this new stuff is really going to work. This new way of, government, this new society, these new technologies, how it will truly affect us mentally, psychologically over a period of time. All this new way of raising a child, this new way of allowing everyone to just choose whatever, and this new everything is relative. There's no real rights and wrongs. It's just all your opinions and everyone's reality is different, and all this crazy new philosophy of how to just exist in life. It's all really new, folks. Really, it is. I mean, most of you, that's all you've ever experienced. But the reality is, in the grand scope of time, it's all brand new. If you put up a timeline of the beginning of human history, at least modern civilization, to now, the amount of time in that timeline, let's say the last 4 decades, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a little dot. Okay, it's really tiny. It's not been proven. There's not been any long-term, testing of all these just new ways to prove that whether they're actually going to work or not. And the worst part of it is that it's happening so rapidly. We have changed more as a society, as a culture, not just American, but human, really, in the last 40 years than probably about the first 6,000 years combined. That's a lot of rapid change in a very, very short amount of time. Not enough time to really test things, to really prove it, to really see if it's working. And if you kind of look around you, and I mean, I'm not a scientist or psychologist or sociologist or whatever kind of ologist it would be, but just in my opinion, looking around, it doesn't look like it's been too successful so far. And so in my unprofessional mind, just filled with common sense, I look around and I say, yeah, to me, this looks like what we're watching things collapse, because it's changing way too rapidly. I mean, just look at the last 5 or 10 years, how much changes have happened. If you went back 10 years ago compared to now, you'd hardly even recognize it. I mean, like my wife was saying, think of someone that was in a coma, for the last 10 years and they woke up, would they even hardly recognize it? The amount of technological advances that's happened. I mean, the stuff that's existing right now, 10 years ago, it was like science fiction. And the stuff that's acceptable in society, 10 years ago, ain't no way anyone would have accepted it. And now it's totally normal and it's okay. It's absolute craziness. You know, the values of things have all changed. Our money is worthless. I mean, you know, back when I was a kid, you could buy a decent pair of shoes for, you know, a day's wage or so. Nowadays, a decent pair of men's boots cost almost as much as a house payment, or at least a half of a house payment anymore, $200 or $300 for a decent pair of work boots. It's craziness. It's absolute craziness. And we sit around and we accept it because we're told that that's just how things progress. That's just how it's supposed to be. I mean, this is just life. Life just progresses this way. But you know what? It doesn't. Yes, life changes and each generation is different than the one before, and each generation kind of pushes the envelope a little bit more than the one before. And, you know, economies change and technologies, you know, come around each generation or two. But in the last 1 or 2 generations, things have moved really rapidly. I mean, it's moving fast. And I just don't think it's sustainable. I think in my heart, that's probably one of the best examples I could come up with of that we are watching our civilization collapse. It cannot sustain this rapid change, this constant, something new, pushing it constantly. I saw something, I think it was just yesterday in the news, this new metaverse, you know, the Facebook thing that's changing where it's going to be all virtual reality and it's all meta whatever verse stuff it is, you know, where everyone has a little virtual reality avatar. And well, someone's already filed some kind of complaint or charges with the police because they claim that while they were in their virtual reality mode, their little virtual reality avatar was sexually groped or molested by another person's virtual avatar, and they want to press charges against it or against them, or I don't know. It doesn't make sense, but that's where we are today. I mean, we got people getting fined or even arrested in some countries because they misgender someone. That doesn't make sense to me at all. It's because it's all changing so rapidly. And folks, we prepare for stuff. You know, most of you are totally get it of what's really, really going on in the world right now. And I'm telling you, I think that we are watching the collapse of our civilization. Is it going to happen all in our lifetime? I don't know. Normally you would say it would take over a few generations to happen, but anymore we like to do things really fast, it seems. So could this all come crashing down within our lifetime? Absolutely could, I think. So continue to get your houses in order, folks. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually, because I think what we're preparing for right now is bigger than anything that most of us could ever have imagined just a few years ago. I mean, this is biblical, apocalyptic kind of stuff that I think that we're just watching slowly play out day by day right before our eyes, until someday we turn around and look back and realize that so much has changed and so much has been destroyed that we're nothing like we once were. All right, folks, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.